You are live.
There we go. Thank you very much, Shay. We are live indeed. Welcome to another ITWeb webinar, talking today about SA's cybersecurity culture. What is happening out there? What are the changing trends in security awareness happening in South Africa? We're going to unpack that with some great research from KnowBe4. They are frequent guests on these webinars. They do great research around this. And I particularly like chatting to KnowBe4 because they are in the business of educating people about security. Very, very big deal. I mean, you can have all the technology in the world. If you do not have awareness, you can really still run into big problems. I always keep thinking of that old World War II propaganda poster, "Loose lips sink ships," which was really saying that for the war effort back then, people had to be careful what they were saying because, you know, there were spies amongst them and collaborators and stuff. And therefore, the less information the enemy had, the better. We can invert that today a little bit, like maybe not loose lips, but how can I put it? Lazy eyes end up sinking companies when the cyber criminals get in there. But we're going to see how much evolution there's been in the South African landscape with this latest data, which we're going to see in a moment. But first, my name is James Francis. I will be your MC today, your facilitator for this webinar brought to you by KnowBe4 and ITWeb. As I said, unpacking cybersecurity. Thank you very much for joining us today. Always great to have you guys here. This session is being recorded. It's a live session, but we are recording it. If you're not able to see everything or you'd like to share it with people afterwards or just revisit the points in here, just keep an eye out for the recording. It should appear as a link in your inbox in the next week or so. If you're also interested on the information today, the slides, maybe the report, or you'd like to get in contact with the guys from KnowBe4 that you're going to see here today, that's also available. Please reach out to the ITWeb events team and they can make that happen for you. Other than the report today, we are also going to see a demo of how security training can work. And again, I'm quite excited about that because A, I love demos. I love seeing stuff in action. But secondly, I don't believe I've ever seen a demo for security awareness training. Very keen to see how it works because it is so important. If you think it used to be important in the past, which it was, it's even more important now. Awareness and vigilance. But how do we get there? Because the guys who are trying to attack us, they are wily. They are constantly trying new things to attack us and to get to us, which is why technology cannot be your front line of cybersecurity, because technology is not the front line of cyber crime. People are, and therefore you need people to fight back. We have a hashtag for today's event, Cybersecurity Culture, one word. We will pop it into the chat box. If you would like to use it to continue this conversation online via social media, you're welcome to use that, Cybersecurity Culture. Also mentioning the chat box, that is for you guys to jump in and say hello. I see a bunch of you already doing that. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the interaction. It's great to hear from you guys. That chat box is there for you guys to, as you're doing, say hello, maybe say where you're from. Drop in comments along the conversation and drop in your questions. If time allows, we're going to do a Q&A at the end. Also, if we can't get to your questions, we do try and endeavor afterwards to get answers to you via other channels. So if you have any questions, drop them in there. If you do not want to drop in the question publicly, you'll see there are three little dots in the chat section. If you hit those three little dots, you will be able to change it to admin only. If you change it to admin only, only the internal team here will say it. And when I read out the questions, I will not use your name. And one last thing about the questions, if you do see your question disappear, it's going into the Q&A only tab. So that's the place for where we're going to check for questions to answer. You know, I suppose you're welcome to also drop them in there directly if you want to, but just know that if your question disappears, it actually means we are paying attention. So let's drop into our topic today because we've got a lot to cover. As I said, cybersecurity in South Africa, cyber crime in South Africa is a very, very big deal. I'm not going to go into the details. We know that Interpol has said we're one of the top hotspots out there. We know we've seen large escalations in attacks on local businesses, on government. We know the information regulator has been very busy dealing with breaches and such. So South Africa is a cybercrime hotspot. It is, though, also a cybersecurity hotspot. Lots of cybersecurity activity here. Let's see how much this has evolved. Know before, do regular surveys on the local cybersecurity environment, finding out the temperature of organizations out there. How are they faring? How's their cybersecurity culture faring? So we're going to unpack that. And as I said, after that, we are going to look at a demo and some best practice and proven methods to improve your cybersecurity culture. So jumping straight into it, I'd like to invite my first guest for today. She is the SVP for Content Strategy and as well as their evangelist at Know Before Africa, Anna Collard. Anna, how are you doing today?
I'm very well. Thanks, James. And thanks, everyone, for dialing in. I see some people are from Cape Town as well. So, yay.
Yeah, I don't know why you Cape Townians sit on computers. You've got such a beautiful city. You should just be out there and bumming it and let the rest of us, keep the economy on rails. What I'm saying is if I lived in Cape Town, I wouldn't be working. So, but Anna, thank you very much for your time today. I'm going to hand over to you. Really looking forward to this. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, James. Let me just quickly share my my slides. And then just one quick check to make sure that you see the correct slides, because I've got two screens.
I do Cybersecurity Culture today with you and Eugene.
Awesome. So yeah, first off, thanks so much for dialing in this morning. Like James said, obviously, if you're in Cape Town, it's a beautiful day here today, so you should probably go up the mountain after this. But what I wanted to do is to share a story before we go straight into the talk. And this is something that happened to me yesterday. And some of you probably would have, who've seen me talk before, would have remembered the story that I shared where I was sitting in an Uber car and I clicked on an Uber phishing email at the same time. And then I was asked to take training that I've actually developed myself. So yesterday what happened is that I forgot my office keys at home. And then instead of going into the office where I usually work, I thought, okay, let me go to another sort of shared office space. And while I was driving there, I was like on such autopilot that I didn't drive to that shared office space. I actually drove into the garage of the place where my gym and the yoga studio is. So I was in the parking lot and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And I don't know if that happened to any of you before, but it seems to happen to me a lot. I'm very scatterbrained. But why am I telling you the story is because, being on autopilot and being distracted is actually one of the major reasons behind people making mistakes online, me included, by the way. So I've failed multiple phishing simulation tests before, even though I've been in security for 20 odd years. And I always have done when I'm distracted, when I'm on autopilot, when I'm multitasking, not being focused in the present moment. And this is not just me. Like, there's been various research reports that confirm that in about half of the cases, people click on, let's say, a phishing email, or they forward a deepfake, not because they necessarily don't know better, but because they're not really paying attention. And that's really it when we talk about security awareness and security culture, is that awareness by itself. So if we get trained and we get educated about the threats out there and what can happen, obviously it's a super important first step, right? But it's not enough. Like, just understanding something doesn't mean that we actually behave accordingly in the moment when it matters. And then, so this is like really the gist of it, is that awareness by itself does not automatically result in secure behavior. And something that we have a bit of a problem in our space, and the security awareness, security training, security culture space, is that we're throwing around a lot of different definitions that mean different things to different people. So we talk about security awareness, we talk about security culture and behavior, we talk about the human risk effect, or the more positive side of it would be the human layer defense, et cetera, and each of these are actually really sort of important elements of an overall security culture program, but they're all slightly different. And I guess what's important is if we consider that even if you don't actively work towards a more mature security culture, you have a security culture. There is a certain set of behaviors that people will do every day, a certain set of beliefs or rules that they follow, whether you like it or not. So each organization has a form of security culture that's in place already. And it really is, this is what we're wanting to talk about today, is to how can we proactively sort of move the maturity level from a maybe rudimentary or initial sort of awareness only security culture into one that is a more mature security culture where people embrace not just the understanding of the importance of cybersecurity, but also the understanding of the importance that they have or that they play in the day-to-day things that they do, in the fact that we need to be aware of our own human vulnerabilities, the fact that we are distracted, that we're multitasking, the fact that we shouldn't, for example, in my case, that's one of the rules I've applied, is I will not, when I check my emails on my phone and I'm on the go, I will not click on links or open things. Like, that's one of my rules now, because I've just been too often in a situation where I've failed one of our phishing tests because I was in that state that doesn't, that's not conducive to actually paying attention and being critical, which is actually one of the most important things we need to build into our security culture. And particularly, James, you also mentioned it early on, or before we actually kicked off, this whole notion of the emerging threats and the world that we see ourselves in. Deepfakes is has been rated as one of the biggest concerns. In fact, the World Economic Forum they come out every 2 years. Every 2 years they come out with like a list of the top 10 risks in the world, and on top is the climate change. The second one for this and next year is disinformation, by the way, and disinformation empowered by AI or empowered by deepfake technology is absolutely dangerous, particularly when we consider that in South Africa and the UK and the US, we're having massive elections coming up, and how that has an impact not just on a cybersecurity point of view, but on societies at large. And what's been quite interesting is when we look at deepfakes is people generally, and it's you can talk to your friends maybe, that people generally think that they are better than what they are in detecting these deepfakes. Like, people overestimate their abilities. So they think they're better. At the same time, it's also been researched that they actually feel that the made up or the synthesized images look more trustworthy, or the videos look more trustworthy than the real content. So we've got like a double whammy here, where people, on the one hand side, they feel too confident. On the other hand, they're actually trusting more than they should in this technology. And I'm going to just show you a little example of a deepfake that I've created about myself. Let's have a look. Let's see whether you trust this thing more than you trust me. Let's play it. I hope you can hear it. Hi all, this is my slightly creepy avatar I generated last night. It somehow makes my accent sound a little bit less German, which might actually be a good thing, right? So that was created completely fictitiously. Obviously, I've uploaded a video of a talk I did before, and then I can just type into this app. It's called HeyGen, by the way. And I can make it or her or whatever, this thing, the avatar, I can make her say whatever I want. And for some reason, they've given me a more British sounding accent, which I quite like, actually. So maybe I should have her do my talks in future. But it's really easy to do. It doesn't cost a lot of money. And that's the concerning thing, is that if you have someone with a malicious intent, they can very easily create these deepfakes and then use them for fraud, for trickstery, for political manipulation, etc. Oops. And we've already seen it, right? So apparently between, I think, beginning of December and beginning of January, there have been 140 plus deepfake versions of Rishi Sunak on Facebook that had to be taken down. And if you consider that the social media platforms, they should have, and they do have policies in place to not allow this kind of content, but they also sort of on the back foot in terms of how do you even identify whether this is a deepfake or not? How do you make sure that this has been used not for fun but for malicious purposes. So this is a really tricky situation. And unfortunately, even though there are a lot of companies that are trying to combat deepfakes with technology, as it stands right now, it's actually very difficult or very process intensive and resource intensive to do real-time deepfake detection. And there also, none of them that are out there are 100% accurate. Obviously, as technology changes, as AI is sort of the pace of technology is sort of changing all the time. So those numbers may look a bit better now, but the reality is that as it stands right now, like the social media platforms don't have an automatic detection mechanism in place, nor do we as consumers or as enterprises to say, well, this is a deep fake versus it's not. But there is progress happening, so it will be interesting to investigate to see what's where this is going. But in the meantime, it's really up to us. It's up to the consumers, the users, the people to be more attentive, be more present when we are sort of faced with content that might be slightly manipulative. And even though it's difficult to detect it, the one thing that we can do is apply critical thinking and just slow things down a little bit and sort of apply that, that pause and that critical thinking in the moment when it matters, and not clicking on it, not forwarding it. And that's something that I feel quite strongly about, and I actually call it the zero trust mindset, or a zero trust culture that we need to help create in our organizations, that is slightly aligned with the mindfulness concept, where it's not so much, obviously we have to teach people also the technical ways of how to verify something, how to hover over a link, how to call someone to check if this is a phishing email or not, etc., etc. But the most important thing is that initial pause, that when you, for example, like me, when you're sitting in your car and you're on autopilot and you're not really paying attention, that you shouldn't check your emails, right? Or if you realize that you're getting emotionally triggered, which is one of the main techniques that social engineers are doing, is that we slow down, learn how to not react, and, well, create this sort of zero trust mindset or zero trust culture. And how do we build this? So we ran a survey with ITWeb in February, and we had about 200 responses across sort of the which is always nice in the ITWeb readership. You've got the smaller environments all the way to the big, like 10,000 plus enterprises. The majority of the responses, like 37%, were from the IT space, which I guess is not a surprise being the ITWeb leadership, but also quite a few from government, financial services, and then all through all the other industries. And one of the questions that we asked is, in your own words, can you describe what is security culture? What does security culture mean? And I've just sort of, highlighted some of the ones that I really liked. Like somebody said, it's more than awareness and training, it's a mindset shift. And that's exactly it, right? This is what I've just mentioned. It's not just understanding the threat, understanding that there are deepfakes, for example, but it's what can I do about it, particularly if there isn't a technical solution for it. And that's that mindset shift. It's that mindset shift of, well, I have to actually slow down, and I can't react so quickly, and I should avoid multitasking and autopilot when I'm faced with emails or phone calls or social media posts that might be manipulative. The other response that we got was, being aware, measured, and practice as part of your normal behavior. Absolutely, that's what we talk about when we say a culture that's sort of ingrained in the daily behavior. Also, someone which maybe that person is already a KnowBe4 customer, because that's exactly the definition we use as well. A security culture refers to the collective values, beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors that people display in an organization regarding the security practices. And then also somebody said, well, security culture in the organization anyway is almost non-existent. So what was quite nice, though, is that out of the 200 responses, we got 200 different versions and definitions back. So it's quite, it's still something that's, going back to the one of the initial slides, where we have a bit of a definition problem. Like everybody has a slightly different idea of what security culture means. So I just want to sort of, summarize this again the way we define it, and we've aligned quite closely with the social sciences. We said, well, a culture, organizational culture, is really the ideas, the customs, and the behaviors that people apply when they're in that organization. And in the security space, this refers to security behavior or anything that influences the cybersecurity. But if we leave the academics aside, ultimately what we need to do as security practitioners is really to ultimately win our people's hearts and minds, right? We have to engage them. We have to get them on our side to wanting to change. We have to influence their behaviors, like get them to change something that they're doing on a daily basis with the ultimate goal of reducing risk. And risk not just to us in the organization, but also to them personally. And then remember also that when we talk about risk, that comes in different flavors or threats, really. Like there are threats that are aimed directly at the human. So those are the social engineers that will target a person rather, because it's easier than breaking through sophisticated technology, because social engineering is still one of the most effective ways of manipulating people and getting us to, basically allow the perpetrators into the environment. But then there's also risks and threats that come from the humans themselves. Like, again, in my case, my scatterbrain makes me send emails to people I shouldn't send them to. So we have those two sort of risks and threats related to the human factor. And ultimately what we want to do is reduce that risk and then empower the people to become an extension of the security team and be like a daily defender in the environment or in the culture. So one of the questions we asked in that survey was whether South African organizations are experiencing social engineering, or an increase rather in social engineering threats in the past year. And you can see that 15% said, well, they had a dramatic increase, like more than 10%. And then another 30% said there's been a slight increase. So about 45% have experienced an increase, 22% same as last year, and then only very few, so 7% said that they actually have experienced a decline in social engineering attacks. One of the questions also that we always ask is, how important is security culture to your operations? I think the good news is that it's either very important or important. So 93% of the respondents said that it's important or very important, which is great. And then it's even higher when it comes to, how important is security culture to the customers or the clients of those organizations. And this, I think, has also changed the world of cybersecurity slightly. The fact that having like a cyber security program that's mature is actually a competitive advantage. It's really something that consumers and customers are paying attention to, and it's not just a grudge, purchase anymore, like this insurance kind of thing. It's actually really something that adds to the quality of your services and products in some way, and shows the respect that we have to pay to our customers' personal information and I guess the community in general. And then also, I think good news is that the majority of the participants are actually running security awareness and culture programs at the moment. 46%, so nearly half of you, said they provide awareness and training at, targeted at different audiences. They combine this with frequent phishing simulations. And then 37% said, yes, they do something, but it could be more. And then only 17% said they're currently not doing anything. So the good news is that 83% of the participants answered in the positive. Then, though, doing something is better than doing nothing, but it's also a question of how effective is the current awareness and culture program. And again, I think it's actually quite positive. So 20% or 19% said it's very effective, and another 40% said it is effective. So we have about 60%, so the majority, who rate their security awareness programs as being effective. And then the rest is sort of your somewhat or not really, so it could be improved upon. And then we asked, okay, well, what improvements do you think could be made? And then hope you can read this here. You can see for yourself that measurement and assessing the effectiveness is actually one of the main requirements or improvements that the respondents thought they could make. Collecting and analyzing more user behavior data, adding more simulation techniques, such as phishing simulations, and then improving the quality or the effectiveness of the content. And some of you also said adding in disciplinary actions, like warning for users that are not participating in the training or that are constantly failing phishing tests multiple times, adding more rewards. So those were some of the suggestions that were made by the respondents. And then if we just have a quick look at sort of the evolution of security awareness or security culture. So a couple of years ago, and I also remember when I started Popcorn, which is now over 10 years ago, like this is sort of where we started really in the basic. So we moved from in-house with organizations created some sort of PowerPoint compliance training. Then we moved to providing some content that was maybe a little bit more engaging and, just offering training content. And then at some point, a couple of years ago, we added the phishing simulations that became part and parcel of security awareness training. And then only sort of recently, I think as an industry, we've been able to add more meaningful metrics to these programs. And then ultimately building a security culture needs all of these initial steps, but it goes beyond that. So it really helps embedding those principles across the organization, and changing an organizational culture takes time, it takes effort, but this is ultimately the highest level of maturity. And if we then apply like sort of a maturity model where you have these different levels, it obviously, if we look at, so we in this graph we have like level 1, which is a very basic sort of, we only do the compliance training and we force users once a year to do like a 45 minutes compliance training kind of checklist approach. That's not very effective, by the way, in terms of changing behavior, but that's sort of where let's say the more the sort of lower levels of maturity organizations would still be. And then as you move up the ladder, your security culture will become more ingrained, more effective. And with that, the actual risks, so the red line here represents people making mistakes, people clicking on phishing emails, the actual sort of breach likelihood, that reduces over time. And then the awareness or the culture maturity, which is the blue line, obviously goes up. And we've sort of mapped our customers according to this level. And you can see that most of KnowBe4's customers are in the level 2 to level 3 field. And what's also interesting is that, again, and this goes, maybe it's a human trait, is that we tend to overestimate where we are. Like a lot of organizations or the CISOs or the security awareness practitioners that we speak to, they feel that they're actually higher than they actually are in terms of the maturity. But yeah, so the idea is to move from, if you're on a level 2, to move to like a level 3 or level 4. And then as you move up, your risk reduces and your awareness level or your culture goes up. Here's another graph that sort of visualizes that. So, people opening phishing emails, clicking on phishing emails, sharing credentials, that's real. That likelihood is still super high when you're in the beginning phases of that maturity. But then as you move into a more mature security culture, the knowledge increases, the phishing emails reported, that's another metric that needs to go into that, like how often do people actually report suspicious emails? That is going up. And then obviously the security culture score is going up as well, whereas the risky scores go down. So, but how do we actually get people to do these things, or to embrace that culture. And well, we can do that by learning from the scientists again, or the sciences. And one in particular is the BJ Fogg. He's like the father of behavioral sciences or behavioral design. And he's come up with a model called the BJ Fogg behavior model. And he says that behavior change happens not just if you tell people about it, right? So the awareness by itself is not enough, but people will change behavior if you apply three things. One, motivation. You have to get people to wanting to embrace this new way of thinking or this new behavior change. So we have to engage them. We have to motivate them. The second thing is we have to provide them with the tools and the ability in order to do the change. And preferably that should be very simple to do. And then thirdly, we have to constantly remind and prompt and nudge people to do the right thing. And that applies to any form of behavior change, whether it's someone wanting to do more sports or change their lifestyle or diet, or whether we want people to become more security aware and build that security culture. So if you look into each of these elements, or the motivation side, this is the dopamine molecule, which we always have to bring in when we talk about motivation and driving people to do something. It's actually not a fun molecule. If you have too much of it, it becomes addictive. But if you want people to do things, if you want people to get up and change something, then it's good to it's good to activate dopamine or create content or activities that are somewhat dopamine inducing. And how do we do it? Well, we have to, for example, not use the same mindless, boring content. We have to use sort of content that is engaging, story-based, short, humorous, maybe gamification, focusing on the why before the what. Also focusing on something that people can relate to in their personal lives, that they're interested in. I'm thinking about parents in particular. This is such a crazy world. I mean, I also have 2 children, and to think about, well, how do we protect our kids online? So this is something that people are actually really concerned about and interested in personally. And by using leaderships, like without leadership buy-in, I mean, we all know nothing works, but we can also look at maybe influencers that are in the company, people that others look up to use them as sort of ambassadors or spokespeople, or bringing in celebrities sort of from the outside. Like some of our customers have used stand-up comedians to come in and help with their campaigns, using stories and emotions. That helps more than just facts. A positive and more empathetic approach also, by the way, works better than just a sort of disciplinarian stick approach. And then, making the content easy to digest is also important. So all of this will help with the motivation. The second component of the behavior design theory is that we have to equip people with the ability to do the right thing. And that means that, for example, when we have a security policy that talks about passwords, and we want them now to have 16-digit passwords and change it every month, that's not something that humans are able to do. So if we have this requirement, then what we need to do is equip them with password managers or some sort of tools that makes the behavior easier to do than doing the opposite. So that's very important for us to consider from a security program point of view, is to see, well, whatever we want our people to do, how can we make it easier for them to do the right thing? And then lastly, this sort of prompting, reminding people to do the right thing is also very important, because there's actually another sort of research called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, and that says that whenever we learn something new, we gradually forget it over time, until we only remember a little bit or maybe nothing, and this is this Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And the thing is, if we relearn the same thing, we'll forget it at a slower rate, and in fact the bits that we remember will be bigger. So if we can get the relearning just right, it can be a lot more effective. And this also talks to Well, but then when we roll out any form of training or awareness content, we shouldn't do just once a year, but rather do it more frequently, but maybe in small sizes, and repeat a lot of the messages, maybe in different formats, whether that's a game here and then it's like a poster there and it's a newsletter there. So it's very important to keep this forgetting curve in mind when we want people to remember how to do the right things. And then something that also comes into this, the prompt or the sort of reminding people to do the right thing. The simulation, the phishing simulations in particular, are a very powerful way to remind people to do the right thing. And we've actually released, and this you will all get a copy of this white paper, I think, at the end of the presentation. We looked at all our customers, so 60,000 plus customers, 32 million individual users, and all of those together would have gone through more than 493 million phishing tests. We looked at the data, we analyzed the data, and what's really, really interesting is if you then look at the results of that, is if you, and on the one sort of, on the horizontal axis, we've got the training frequency, so how often do people get trained, and then on the vertical one, we look at how often do they get exposed to phishing tests. And if you look here let's say you train every month or more than every month, but you do less than quarterly phishing tests, the effective rate in terms of people not clicking on phishing emails anymore hasn't really improved much. So it's at the 35%. On the flip side, if you only do an annual training, but you do weekly phishing tests, you've got an 89% improvement. So that's really fascinating, is that, and the best results obviously is if you do frequent training and frequent phishing simulations. That's at the 96% if you do weekly phishing and monthly training. And those are hard numbers, this is data-driven facts, which does show that, for example, when we go into an environment for the first time, 30%, so 1 out of 3 people will fail a phishing email if they haven't been trained, they haven't been tested before. That's sort of the average across the globe, by the way. There's not much difference by geography. But then when we do sort of like a quarterly or less than a quarterly phishing test, which a lot of our local organizations still do that. They only do a quarterly phishing test, more to test, like to get a metric where their users are rather than to train them. But then your 30% improves quite a lot. It goes down to 10 or 11%, but that's still not great. If you do quarterly phishing tests, it goes down to 9%. If you do monthly, to about 5 to 6%. But if you do weekly phishing tests, and we do this, by the way, in-house, like we get phished all the time. If you do a weekly phishing test, and then your phish-prone percentage, so the susceptibility of people clicking on phishing emails, goes all the way down to 1.79%. That's a massive improvement. And that's also the right way of looking at phishing simulation tests, more as an in-the-moment training, as a nudge, rather than only a way to, trick people or to get a metric about the how good or bad the environment is. So it's really a training tool, and it's gamified in a way, because in my case, for example, I know that they always use my manager's email address to try and trick me, like a new policy update, or she declines my holiday, and then my emotions go up, and then I'm like, okay, no, could be a phishing simulation. So it really makes me vigilant, because I know that every week I get a phishing email from the security department. So just to summarize, like the influence from more frequent phishing tests is more impactful than doing frequent training, but the best results come when you do both frequently. And then that's really, that takes me to the end of my session. I think I'm still in time. So there he is again, BJ Fox, behavior design model. We need motivation. We have to equip people with the right tools and ability, and we have to prompt them or remind them every so often. And the more frequently we do phishing tests, the higher the vigilance. And all of this is also described, by the way, in that white paper that I've mentioned, like the actual data that we analyzed. But there's another white paper we're also sharing with this talk called the 7 steps to building a security culture. And it's a nice sort of practical way to describe the steps needed to build or improve, like sort of increase the maturity of the security culture. And if I had to summarize it to three steps, it's really, working with the behavior design, like the BJ Fogg model, measuring your program, and repeat, right? It's like flossing. It's not something you can do once a year and then leave it. It's something you have to constantly be active on, and work across the organization. Like, it's not something that one person or one security department can do by themselves. The more we work with the HR and the communications and other departments, the more effective we are. And that's it from my side. Thank you so much for listening. I'm sure we do questions later on, right, James? So I'm just gonna
Yes. We'll do questions later on. Thank you, Anna. So great. Thank you for that, Anna. I think a great presentation. I have a ton of questions to ask and some things I'm very curious about there as well. But for now, let's quickly jump on to the pragmatic side of this. Eugene Swatch is joining us over there. Eugene is the Regional Enterprise Account Manager for Africa for KnowBe4. Eugene, thank you very much for joining us. I understand you're going to give us a bit of a demo of how you guys approach these things at KnowBe4.
Absolutely. I'm hoping that you can see my screen. Really great to have a quick word with each and everyone on the call. What I'd really like to do, it's not going to be a demonstration in the sense of having to look at, boring KnowBe4 slides that you may have seen before, but it's really going to take on a more practical example of how can we implement everything that Anna has really just shared with us, right? How is the KnowBe4 platform designed and geared to be able to proactively and proficiently put that in place? So if you take anything away from what I'm going to disclose to you, it's really just to give you the tools and the insight to start. Now, we're dealing with an audience. There's about 127 people online that are in different stages of their security awareness posture. Some have started a training program similar to phishing program. Some do all their internal training by hand. So what I'm really proposing is, at the beginning of the year, it's nearing the end of the first quarter, it's maybe a good place for us to kind of stop and evaluate where we are. Some of the questions that would have come out from Anna's talk is really, but how? How do I then do an assessment within my organization to be able to identify what our security posture is? Do we have a security culture? And what are the steps to put in place to really just start? Or if I have a matured security awareness training regimen already, am I able to evaluate where I am currently at? What we do as a baseline, anybody that joins KnowBe4 after having done a demo, after having gone through your internal procurement processes, we treat everybody with the same gloves. Despite what solutions you have in place, be them technical, be them physical, let's have a look and see if we were to send in an unsuspected email within your organization, what would the proneness or the susceptibility be of people opening up that email? Now, on average, my slide shows our failure rate is close to about 33.2%. And after, as Anna said, active training, be it monthly, be it bi-weekly, be it quarterly, after 12 months of active training, really with content that is designed to enact a change of behavior, we are able to bring that number down. Our closest friends and our closest allies from a KnowBe4 perspective are the ones that is in control of the organization that doesn't get to sleep at night, because they are in control of the ICT division, right? Cybersecurity, IT. And what we've really found our solution does very well is reduce that headache, right? Reduce data loss, reduce you having to reconfigure PCs on a daily basis. And the reason why I'm starting with this really, I mean, the latest data that we have is from Vate Secure. We found that in the last quarter of 2023, phishing attacks rose by 173%, right? Malware threats have increased to about 110%. So this is still the method widely used by hackers and bad actors to infiltrate organizations. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and really just take you into a live version of what the platform looks like, but really how we are then able to address those foundational steps in how do I measure the security culture of my organization, and really how do I survey my end users to be able to get an idea of what is their knowledge as it pertains to security awareness. I'm sharing my screen one last time, and you'll see this is an example of our platform where you can see this client has been with us for the past 6 years. This is obviously fictitious data, right? This is just for the benefit of showing you what you will have at your disposal on the Kevin Mitnick Security Awareness Training platform. Phishing, very important. That's the baseline. You are able to, on the KnowBe4 platform, benchmark your vertical, your company size, as well as your program maturity with industry-related information. So we know from the 5 million people that we have access to in terms of data, that an industry of technology that is over 1,000 users at the baseline has about a 32% failure rate. And then as that gets to a maturity of 3 months after training, that goes down to 18%, and after a year can go down as to 6.5%. I'm going to encourage you after the webinar to reach out to us, knowbe4.com, and have us do a proof of value to determine and establish what your company baseline is. And we will then practically be able to show you how that can be reduced by making use of this platform, which is really designed and geared to do that for you. Two very important points that was actually brought up by Anna is really, and it really also speaks to building steps, foundational things. Where do we stand as an organization? What is our security culture? What is the knowledge base of our individuals as it pertains to certain aspects of cybersecurity? So we, as KnowBe4, we have 2 assessments that can really just help your organization with your current security awareness knowledge. It's really designed to help you gain insight into the strengths and weaknesses of your organization. The first one being the Security Awareness Proficiency Assessment. It's really designed to ensure that we give you the necessary information as to the knowledge base of your organization as it relates to social media, right? Mobile devices. Do they understand the concept of what is the human firewall? How does your employees relate to passwords and the authentication of those? If there's an incident, how is that being reported? Do you have the tools and mechanisms to be able to report that effectively to your IT team? And then, of course, email security and internet use. Once we have that information, and that, by the way, is where we start from a KnowBe4 perspective. We want to get insight to this results, because as we then roll out a effective security awareness training program, we are then able to come back and measure this to see whether that has improved or whether we are able to identify problem areas within the organization that we can basically focus on. The security culture survey, exact same thing. We actually have this in place to ensure that we actually ask certain questions of your workforce, right? Things that relate to, does my organization care about security? Which area of the business are least or most security minded? Which department? which employees are the most risk averse? How strong is our security culture? And then in what part of our organization do we need to improve our security culture? And then also what are we able to implement as an organization to ensure that we tick all of the boxes when it comes to a proficient security awareness program? Know Before is really geared to, first and foremost, make sure that we actually deal with those questions face on. We have within the platform embedded training of every kind that deals with topics that relates to the latest hacks, the latest methods that is really being used by hackers to infiltrate organizations. We've got all of this data. We'd like to share it with you, and we'd like to train your people on what to basically look out for. It's our intent to at all times make sure that we get your employees to think smarter and behave smarter online. That is my 10 minutes. It's not, as I said, an authentic demo. I'm going to encourage you to reach out to us via knowbefore.com, set up a 30 to 45-minute session with someone like myself, where we literally go into the actual platform, do a survey on what your needs are, where you want to be in 6 months' time, and we can practically show you via the use of the platform how we can get you there. James, over to you.
Well, I'm muted there. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Eugene, for that, for giving us a bit more insight on how this can be done at the organizations where you are at. Just for your note, guys, you will see we've just in the file section shared both the white papers there. So please go there, grab and download them, give you a lot more insight on this. I'd like to welcome Anna and Eugene back so we can do a quick Q&A. And if you guys have any questions on your side, please pop them in there. So that we can explore this topic a little bit more and get your questions answered out there. But yeah, thank you for coming back, Eugene and Anna. I was looking at this, and Eugene, maybe you can comment on this. Both of you comment on this. So you might have seen the headlines, there was recently a deepfake hack that happened in Hong Kong. I believe the guys got away with like $25 million. What's more interesting about that is this deepfaking happened, I believe, over a Zoom call, and it involved deepfakes of senior executives. And the person who was hoodwinked was a more junior person, and they didn't really talk during the meeting. They were just given instructions. What this tells me is the criminals very cleverly found the blind spot there. You know, if you're in a culture where you don't talk back to your boss or you don't ask stupid questions or things like that, it can really be exploited. Are we at a stage where companies should not just be thinking security culture, but how can I put it, whether their company culture is conducive for security? Should we be looking at some kind of reframing here? I think...
do you want me to take that? Or
no, I think, yeah, you start with Anna, and then we'll hear from Eugene as well.
Okay. I think that example is so perfect in terms of how the emotional vulnerabilities that we all have as humans, that you cannot actually train with a technical awareness training. You know, like you can teach people about the threat of deepfakes and that's possible, but when somebody is in a scenario where he gets told by his supervisors and the CEO of the company to do something, we all are in that emotional state where we say, oh, that's the authority, you know, I better do what I'm supposed to do. And often these con artists, these social engineers will apply pressure. They will, I mean, there was another story that came out this week with this lady who's a journalist, and she ended up handing $50,000 to someone who conned her over the phone. But if you read those stories, they're all very similar. It's these applying pressure, applying like preventing people from thinking slowly and thinking critically, and exactly like you said, asking questions. So for me, I feel so strongly about that. If we want to create an effective security culture, we have to create a mindfulness culture in the company that allows people to slow down, that allows people to say, I will not reply to my emails on a weekend at midnight, like I will do one thing at a time that actually it explains how bad multitasking is, that will, apart from doing things fast and quickly and immediate, to go back to a more slowness, and that's actually a cultural thing that we have to build on, that goes beyond the cybersecurity team, and it goes more towards leadership and HR and just company culture in general. But that's my that's my 2 cents. So Eugene, I don't know if you want to add to that.
That's a great point. I think what has happened since COVID is we've actually become desensitized to this whole concept of online chatting, of Zoom, and all of the different methods that we use to communicate. Before, it used to be professional. Our cameras used to be on. We used to do small talk, which has now really started to irritate us, right? We don't want to do small talk. We don't want to go in and say, hey, where are you? I'm in Cape Town. The weather's great. I'm right next to the mountain. And our cameras are off because we're working from home and we are still in our pajamas, or our attire may not be as professional as it should be. And those are the areas that hackers are really using to kind of gain control and gain access. And that's why we are seeing an increase of people being scammed via Zoom. Cameras off, there's no interaction, there's no small talk. And so that really just creates an environment where people can be taken advantage of.
Eugene, I think you just made some managers happy. Now they have a reason to enforce people to put their cameras on during these chats. We have
Okay, James will join us just now again. He did mention there might be a hiccup like this. We will give him a couple of minutes, and there he joined again.
There we go. Sorry, guys. My apologies about that. That was a mistake on my side. We just had a question coming in there privately, maybe starting with Eugene on that, to comment on this. As an employee, how can they convince their employer to take these things seriously?
It's really just awareness. It is giving your employer a concrete example of what could potentially happen if a breach occurs and somebody opens up an email that may bring a network down, or that may actually just download a virus into the organization. It is listen, I recommend maybe contact a company like KnowBe4 or other vendors out there to really do some research around what I can do as an employee to kind of change my attitude towards what I do online.
And then, Anna, I was thinking, looking at the statistics you gave earlier, I was fascinated by how you spoke about the security culture maturity model and how there are various stages to it. One thing that strikes me on that is these things will work better and better the more you incorporate the company. So not just doing training, but really understanding where the company is at. The two areas that I think has recently developed in modern companies, one of them is there's a lot more detection and response technologies that are in these environments, which means your security guys are getting reports on perhaps who might be targeted, who's more vulnerable. I'm also thinking ESG at the same time has become an area that's become more concerned with employee well-being. What I'm getting at is it feels to me that if we want to do security training, collaborating with areas like that might be the most effective way of doing this. Can you just comment on this of not just bringing other parts of the company in to make the security training a lot more effective?
Oh yeah, 100%. And just to give you an example, at NetBank, we've done a case study where they partnered with the HR department because we ran like a cyber mindfulness sort of campaign, and because mindfulness is sort of is being promoted by the HR department already, it's part of their corporate wellness program. It was like a no-brainer to work together, right? Because it's been promoted in leadership training, it's promoted for general sort of mental health and well-being for the general staff, and then the cybersecurity team sort of tagged along. And then in the beginning, they had a roadshow. In the beginning, the users were like, well, "Why is cybersecurity there at this like corporate wellness day?" And then Christine started explaining why. She said, well, because you know what, if you don't feel well, if you're anxious, if you're distracted, if you're stressed, you're going to make more mistakes. So, we in cybersecurity are about helping people make less mistakes. So it's important that we consider this from a human aspect and have a more empathetic approach towards security culture. And so if you want to learn more about that, I'm happy to, talk to you or even get you in touch with Christine. She's very happy to talk about that campaign.
Fantastic, thank you, because I think that is the key of it, is understanding who your targets are, how they're being targeted, etc. And I think companies, we should probably be careful not to end up in a siloed security culture where everybody's trying to do their own little thing. We have one last question here before we close off from Michael Dean. How important is it, do you think, to use an AI ICES email security solution in conjunction with training and using emails that are sanitized at the start to train? A little bit over my head in the jargon there. So, Eugene, I'm going to ask you that first, and then we'll get Anna's comment as well.
Look, I've been in the security industry for quite a long time. And for the longest time, a technical solution is always forefront, right? That's always what we go for. The more we can keep things away from the end user and implement things to kind of deal with the situation from a technological point of view, fantastic. There has to, though, be almost a silo of an understanding of the infiltration points is not at that level. Emails are still filtering through to people's inboxes. There's 11% increase in people opening up unsuspecting emails. So we have to combine the technical solution with the human aspect. We have to then make sure that we, from the ground up, from the top to the bottom, from the CEO downwards, right, make each and every person aware of what's out there and get them battle ready to be able to decipher between what is real, what is not. As we are going to start using more AI, we are going to be able to differentiate between what is AI, what has a human component to it. And I think that's up to us and so many other organizations out there, Anna, that has to bridge that gap, that has to noticeably show people what those differences are. That's a huge task, but we can do it.
I think closing, Anna, just using technology. I love that the website you, HeyGen, that you posted earlier. Would you maybe recommend, maybe this is a bit of a dirty trick, but companies should generate deep fakes of their employees and present them to those employees and show, by the way, I didn't know you said that. The employee's like, I never said that. Well, welcome to deep fakes. Could some of these shock and awe tactics maybe work as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously in an ethical boundary or in ethical frameworks, but I think they work really well because a lot of people, I mean, for example, my parents-in-law, they didn't know what deepfakes were. So I just showed them and then they're like, oh my God, So I think it's good to, like, a picture says more than 1,000 words. You can explain to them what it is and how it works. And it's a combination of deep learning and fake and whatever. That's all theoretical. So if you just show it, I think it's quite effective. And if you can create a deep fake of yourself or your colleague and use it in an internal session, I think that could be fun and quite educational.
Fantastic, thank you. Just from a personal anecdote, yesterday I was caught out about deepfake. It was during a presentation, and the presenter didn't warn us we're going to see a deepfake video, and the message in the video resonated with me. I was quite disappointed afterwards to go like, oh no, it's a deepfake. It doesn't exist. So if you're out there thinking, yeah, I can spot a deepfake, I'm just going to tell you, no, you can't. No, you can't. I'm happy to bet money on that. And if you can right now, in a year, you can't. But at the end of the day, it is vigilance. It's the same with phishing. It's the same with business email compromise. It's anybody trying to use subterfuge to get to you. So it's really about awareness and building awareness. And I do love what we saw there today. I especially love, Anna, what you showed there, that there is clear progress as you move along the maturity curve and how you actually reduce your risks towards really the basic techniques out there. And unless you are a very, very, very high value target. Most criminals are going to use off the shelf or slightly modified tools to get to you. If you're too hard a target, they're going to go somewhere else. Of course, it depends on the profile of your company and your risk thing, but we should keep that in mind, that a little bit of diligence can go a long way. With that, I'd like to conclude this webinar. So firstly, I would like to thank our guest, Jyoti from Anna College. She is the Senior Vice President for Content Strategy, and she's as well an evangelist at Know Before Africa, and Eugene Swartz, who's the Regional Enterprise Account Manager for Africa at Know Before. Guys, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And to our audience as well, thank you very much, guys, for being in there, for asking the questions. Please go grab the white papers. Keep an eye out for the recording coming through on email to you. And please do contact Know Before, because as we've seen here, technology alone is not enough. Doing a little bit of training is not enough. Sending threatening emails to your employees is definitely not enough. You need a consistent, integrated approach, but you can start small. You can start somewhere, build it up, because trust me, you do not want to be on the other side of an attack. And please do not think that you are good enough just to spot an attack. You might be, but your employees might not. So thank you very much for joining us today. This has been a ITWeb and Know Before webinar, SA Cybersecurity Culture today, changing trends in security awareness. Please have a great day further, great Wednesday further. All you Cape Townians, please go outside immediately, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.